Hello, my name is DiGeronimo. Most of my family members call me Donnie. I grew up in a large Italian family in Montclair, New Jersey. Um, I'm named after my grandfather, who was also Donato DiGeronimo. My father was Vincenzo D'Annunzio DiGeronimo, and my mother was Mary Palullo. My father's family had, my grandmother was a twin. Her twin sisters married two brothers, and they had 15 and 13 children and lived in the same house for 24 years. How they did that, I don't know. They slept four in a bed, feet to face. It seems pretty crazy. My mother's family had five. Um, Most of my holidays were spent with my mother's family: Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, and most of our birthdays. My mother, her sister Jenny, and my grandmother, my mother's mother, were great ravioli makers. Um, so ravioli was every occasion. As I said before, birthdays and holidays, we had ravioli, and it was a great process. We as kids we loved it. We'd come home from church around 9 o'clock, usually at my grandmother's house, and sometimes later at my mother's or my aunt's. Um, they would start making ravioli around between 9 and 9:30. I remember them making like 400 ravioli and putting them to dry on sheets on the beds, and we would be able to eat them fresh right as they made them, uncooked. They were delicious. Um, so uh, my mother's family was very interesting. They mostly it was dominated by females for the most part because there were four sisters and one the older brother. And my uncle Mike was the older brother was pretty quiet, so he didn't say very much. So on holidays we would spend usually at my grandmother's house on Christmas Eve, and then she till she passed, and then we shared it. We would do them at my mother's house for a while, and then later on to my cousin Roseanne's house. Uh, but Christmas was more important. Christmas Eve was more important than Christmas for those families. Uh, we would we would start with fish dinners, but they would mix it. It wasn't solely fish. They'd have sausage. They'd have other things on Christmas Eve. But we'd start at 6 o'clock, and the Christmas Eve's then maybe there was about 30 people, maybe a little bit more, and we would go at some point. Some of us would go to midnight mass, and then we'd come back after 1 o'clock. And my aunt Jenny who was a great pizza maker, who had made the dough earlier in the day, the pizza dough, and we would start eating pizza at 1 o'clock. Something to look forward to. Those nights didn't end. We'd wind up coming home at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and then my family, my immediate family, we didn't do very much on Christmas. Christmas Eve evening, we would go to my uncle Sonny's house, my father's older brother, and then the whole family would come there, and people would bring food. But as far as a big Christmas dinner, we didn't have it. The big dinner was Christmas Eve, and as I said, we'd have pasta, fish, and all other things. But then they would play cards and whatever till 6 or 7 in the morning. So we would get home, and the decision at that point, depending on how old I was do we open the Christmas presents as soon as we get home at 6 or 7 in the morning? When I was younger, the answer was yes. When I was older, we just went to bed and opened them later. So that was pretty interesting. Family meant everything to us at that point. We got together often. On my father's side, we would do it on Christmas Eve. They would be There'd be Sundays where we'd have like 60, 65 people eating, and I remember they would put planks on between chairs just so everybody could sit, and we'd eat in shifts. Um, so Christmas was always a very important holiday. Later on, we broke it down to where my cousin Roseanne would do Christmas Eve, uh, Lori would do Thanksgiving, and I would do Easter. Um, where there was always pasta involved, usually ravioli or manicotti, and then all of the other things, turkey, ham, and all the fixings. So we had a little bit of everything. It was all those holidays were pretty interesting for us. Okay, usually because we got together so often, everybody did know everybody's business, so you knew what was going on. I have a Christmas story that I want to tell. We were eating at my grandmother's house, and my aunt Millie, my mother's youngest sister, was dating an Irishman, and at that point there was somewhat friction, or you know, the Irish and the Italians didn't really mix so well. I mean, they did in business and whatever, but and when we were socializing, they didn't socialize that much, and they didn't intermarry as much then. They were just starting to. My Billy was was supposed to come. There was a lot of pressure on him to come to 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 Christmas Eve dinner at my grandmother's house. I mean, I that would be a lot of pressure no matter what. But being an Irishman coming to an Italian Christmas Eve dinner had to have a lot of pressure on him. I remember sitting in the living room. I must have been 8 or 9, and we were all playing, and then everybody was like waiting for him to come. It was a big event actually, and then the phone rang, and the phone was in the hallway between the kitchen where the women were cooking, and the living room where we were playing. And my Aunt Millie answered the phone, and it was my Uncle Billy. They later got married, as you could tell, and he was out drinking with his friends and wasn't going to come. It was pretty funny because it was funny to us in retrospect. At the time, it was not funny. It was scary. My aunt started screaming and crying, hung up the phone, and then bedlam broke loose with the sisters saying you should have never been dating an Irishman. Blah, blah, blah. But later on, they got married, and he became my grandmother's favorite. Um, okay, I'm going to stop it here for a second and read the notes. Okay. Okay. The question is whether there was much conflict in any of these things. I don't remember a lot of conflict. It was a little internal. Things would happen over just throughout discussions, but mostly our family all got along pretty well. Now, as time goes on, everybody's aware of politics a lot more than they were then. Then it was all the talk was about family. It was about neighbors, friends, and more about family. That's what we discussed mostly. Um, I miss these times now because now everybody's kind of moved on. And since one of the um, since the older generation, my mother and her generation, they're all gone, and now we're not getting together as much as we used to. It seems to be a shame. It's very sad for me. I would do Easter, and I could tell. I'm going to tell a story about Easter, but it could apply to Christmas. My Aunt Jenny, who was a force and a great cook, as was my mother. My mother was also a very good baker, but I would be doing Easter, and the, the joke that my mother and I used to have at one point used to actually kind of aggravate me. But my Aunt Jenny would start asking my mother in January, "Is Donnie going to be doing Easter this year?" And my mother would ask me, "Aunt Jenny wants to know if you're going to do Easter." I'm like, "It's 3 months away. I'm doing it, and we'll think about it when we get closer." And then somewhere in February, towards late February, my aunt would ask my mother, "What's he making? Is he making ravioli?" Which we didn't make anymore. The younger generation would buy it, or manicotti, which we would make because we would make the crepes. So I would never make my decision until maybe a week or two before as to what we were going to do. But we always had to have either ravioli or manicotti. And I'm around a lot of Italians these days, and there is no such thing as manicotti in Italy. Uh, they have I forget what they call it now. I'll have to think about it. But so my Aunt Jenny would kind of control this from months before, and then at some point she would tell my mother the Polio ricotta was on sale, so I bought it. Okay, so that meant we were going to make the manicotti. So she would have influenced what my decision a month before I actually wanted to make it. So at some point after being aggravated about that for a couple of years, but never really upset because I love my Aunt Jenny. I just decided, okay, from now on, I'm gonna and my Aunt Jenny, my mother, and now we were taking some of my father's family over. My Aunt Molly, who just passed away this year at 106. She was another force to deal with. She, I invited them to come on Thursday, you know, to start cooking with me on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. So they came, and my Aunt Jenny was like a war horse. She would stand in front of that oven and make the crepes for the manicotti for hours. It was a great solution because I had them all there in my kitchen, which I loved, all the time. One other quick story: 1986. We were getting ready to go to my grandmother's for Christmas Eve, and my Aunt Millie was bringing something over to her so she could cook it, and I found my grandmother lying on the floor, and she had passed away. And this was on December 23rd of, I think, 1986 or 85, I can't remember. And I was working, I was a firefighter, and I was working in the area, and I got called to come, and the whole family, my mother, father, my aunts, uncles, they were all there, all on the porch. And nobody could deal with talking to the ambulance unit as to even give my grandmother's name because they were so upset by it all. I just remember having to come in and having to deal with the ambulance unit and all of that. Well, I don't really know what else I should say. I have a lot of stories. If anybody wants to ask me any stories in the future, then maybe it'll prompt my memory. All right, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this video.